Hello and welcome to the newest episode of the Pitch Side Podcast. I'm your host, HRD of the BSP. Like, share, comment on the YouTube version, subscribe to the YouTube channel, enable notifications to receive all the updates from these episodes of the podcast and all the content on the channel. Follow us on social media and listen on every podcast listening platform available. You're welcome. So to start things off, we go to Wembley, where the FA Cup final took place between Liverpool and Chelsea. It was the fourth time these two sides meet this season, and it was parity in the three meetings before, although one of them was the final of the Carabao Cup, where Liverpool won through penalties, and this was, a repeat. Certainly the result was a repeat, that Liverpool won the game on penalties, the result being 0-0 in normal time and extra time. But this was a little bit different. This was a game where, because at least in the Carabao Cup we were talking about Chelsea still being relatively good, or relatively one of the best sides in the Premier League, and even close to the title, and there were, the theories that maybe Chelsea could salvage their title season or not, but now it's different. It's firmly Chelsea being behind, far behind Liverpool and City in terms of the title race, being out of that already, losing the Carabao Cup final, being eliminated from the Champions League already, and, Liverpool who needed this game to continue their dreams of the quadruple, and we'll talk about the Premier League, but certainly still within a certain distance to the title race, depending on certain factors if they happen. This game was not as good as the Carabao Cup final. It was not as good as the 2-2 draw in Stamford Bridge, but it didn't need to be. It was a cup final and a game where, again, Chelsea were almost desperate to win. And in certain aspects of the game, it feels like Chelsea were better than Liverpool in certain ways. Like, this game was played in shifts, if you want to say. Like, it was a start for Liverpool, then Chelsea take momentum, miss a couple of chances, Liverpool take the momentum, they miss chances, and Chelsea do so. They exchange momentum between them throughout the game. Fabinho being out for Liverpool was a huge down, was a huge disappointment, and a really big factor in what the game looked like, because it allowed Chelsea to find loads of spaces whenever they took the ball, because Jordan Henderson isn't exactly the number 6 you would expect. He's not someone you'd expect to screen in front of the back four, and particularly in front of the centre halves. And certain unlucky factors as well played in this game. 2 injury substitutions for Liverpool in this game. Van Dijk was injured, he was substituted by Matip. Then you have Mo Salah injured just half an hour into the game and substituted by Diogo Jota, which might be a worry for the final as well. If an injury crisis starts now for Liverpool, that's going to be the most unfortunate time ever. But anyway, Liverpool played the game that they usually would play, even with Henderson being the number 6. Again, that was their best shot, probably at keeping the ball, not allowing Chelsea to really transition quickly behind them. But whenever they lost the ball, it just felt that Chelsea, I'm not going to say on a complete 1v1 versus Alisson all the time, but genuinely there were loads of spaces to play behind Alexander-Arnold, behind Robertson, although Alexander-Arnold defensively was better than usual, and better than most people give him credit for in this game in particular. Robertson was the one with the problems really on his side. Reece James played loads of crosses on his side. He attacked a lot, he ran a lot. Marcos Alonso had a couple of opportunities on the other flank to score. A big chance where he took an extra touch in front of Alisson and let him get. So in general, Chelsea had loads of opportunities to score really in the game, and they had the momentum going on with them. Certain points, particularly in extra time, where Liverpool seemed knackered and exhausted because of the effort they had to do throughout the game. Also, the marathon of matches they play, and the importance of those matches, that not a lot of players are rotated exactly. It allowed Chelsea to have certain opportunities to score, but they weren't effective. Christian Pulisic missed a lot. The absence of of someone like Kai Havertz is a big is a big difference, of course, because he was really, when he was good, he was really good for Chelsea this season. Romelu Lukaku didn't make any impact, so it seems like he's going to be on the way out next season. That's what I really expect. Timo Werner, why he wasn't even subbed on to begin with, like the guy's biggest asset is speed, and in a game where Liverpool looked really tired at extra time, you needed that extra speed in the attack. Well, Ziyech could have been with him. He could have still got Ziyech on, but obviously you need to get Werner with him. But instead, Tuchel thought somehow he thought in a different way. Like, he brought on players for penalties. He brought on Loftus-Cheek in extra time, but then he took him out in the end of extra time for Ross Barkley to penalties. It paid off in a way that that Ross Barkley scored his penalty, but also there was another substitutions specific for penalties that Tuchel made, which was Azpilicueta for Chalobah, but this one didn't pay off, as Azpilicueta was the man who missed his penalty for Chelsea as well. Mason Mount missed another one. Sadio Mane missed for Liverpool, and this was funny because Sadio Mane's reaction to missing the penalty was unbelievable, because Sadio Mane, and apparently this was a story that a lot of Liverpool social media accounts shared, and I saw him laughing after the penalty, but Klopp apparently told him that Sadio Mane, told Sadio Mane that Edouard Mendy, obviously because they're Senegalese, he knows where his angle where he's going to shoot, because he always shoots on the right, strong down the right. So he decided, or Klopp maybe advised him to change his angle, and the thing is that when he changed his angle, Edouard Mendy saved it. I mean, that is quite the IQ from Mendy. So it definitely was a pretty hilarious moment in the middle of a tense game anyway. But still, in the end, it was Konstantinos Tsimikas scoring the the seventh penalty, I should say, for Liverpool to take them to win the FA Cup trophy, the only trophy that was missing from Liverpool's cabinet under Jurgen Klopp. So now he won everything that there is to be won under the sun with Liverpool, and that is going to put him in a different pedestal with a lot of coaches. But of course, they're still within a reach, they're still within a shout for the quadruple, and with the Premier League still unwrapped, a game against Southampton on Tuesday, and of course the last game in the season, for them. Who knows? Maybe they still could get the quadruple done anyway. Leading in now, and we turn our attention to the Premier League. Of course, weekend, still continuing the theme of English football, but we go to the Premier League, and it was round 37 taking place. 7 matches were played all on Sunday, of course. Let's go to the results quickly, then we're going to be talking in details. Tottenham Hotspur defeated Burnley 1-0 at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Harry Kane's from the penalty in the first half. Aston Villa drawn against Crystal Palace 1-1. Leeds United drawn against Brighton Hove Albion 1-1. Leicester City smashed Watford 5-1 away. West Ham drawn against Man City 2-2, the biggest result of them all. And Wolverhampton drawn against Norwich 1-1. And Everton with 2 men down, 9 men, they lost to Brentford 3-2, and that's a big situation for them. And we start from there actually, and then we're going to build the way up basically. So we start with Everton and Brentford, and this is a bad result for Everton. I mean, considering they still have a couple of games in hand, or a game in hand over Leeds, not over Burnley, but over Leeds. It is definitely the kind of game, the kind of game that Everton did not want to, and it was looking good for them. They took the lead thanks to Dominic Calvert-Lewin inside 10 minutes. Everything looked really fine, but then comes the red card for Branthwaite for a professional last man foul. And here's the thing, because right before that red card, Everton had a claim for a penalty on a penalty shout against Richarlison in the penalty box on the same attack. It goes around, and Jared Branthwaite makes the mistake and makes the foul to be sent off. I mean, let's be fair. It is a foul, of course. It's a last man professional foul. He was denying, Brentford's Ivan Toney a chance to score straight away. So, he was going to score anyway, Ivan Toney. So you cannot, potentially going to score, but he was like 1-on-1 with Pickford. So you can't really say it wasn't a professional last man foul. It was. The red card didn't change a lot, but it definitely put Everton, in terms of defending, it gave them a lot more to do for the rest of the game. Seamus Coleman with an own goal in the 37th minute from Wisa's shot. Then Richarlison comes in with the penalty spot late in the first half to lead 2-1. And things looked good for a while, but then came complete capitulation in the second half. Yohan Wissa and Rico Henry scoring twice in quick-fire succession, 62nd and 64th minute to make it 3-2 for Brentford, take 3 points of the game. Eriksen coming with the assist again. He's doing really well with Brentford. I really liked his return to football. And Brentford probably is going to be a really good team for them. Maybe he continues with them next season and is going to give them that, creativity that they absolutely needed. And definitely, I don't feel it's a coincidence, but he's been the turning point of their season, really, because at a certain point, it felt like Brentford were about to slip into that relegation zone and really, start to lose momentum, but they definitely put on a good run, and of course with the help of Eriksen they did that. Elsewhere, of course, in the relegation battle, there's Leeds United drawing against Brighton Hove Albion, a result that again is worrisome as well because Burnley have a game in hand too. They really have a game in hand too. They will be playing Aston Villa, next week, of course, and then they'll be playing Newcastle United in the last game of the season. So it definitely looks like Leeds United are in the real danger, probably even more than Everton. But genuinely, I feel that this three-way battle is still going to continue to the last day of the season. Of course, with Everton, Leeds, and Burnley, it's a crazy end of the season. Everton, of course, have the game against Crystal Palace in hand before they face Arsenal in the final day of the season, which is a game that's going to be defining really for how they're going to end up, either going to be relegated or not. It's going to be a disaster if Everton get relegated, considering the money that they spend, the investments that they put on. At a certain point of the season, they had Ancelotti at the manager last season, so it's definitely one of those situations where you just have to feel sorry for Everton. I mean, the only winners of this is going to be Liverpool fans for all the banter that they would make anyway. As we mentioned, Leeds drawn against Brighton Hove Albion. Burnley losing to Tottenham. Not only an important result for the relegation battle, but also for Spurs themselves and for the top four battle. They now have the advantage of Arsenal, 68 points to 66. Arsenal play Newcastle on Monday away. It's a tricky game, and Arsenal need the win in order to get their full spot back, and it genuinely looks like they might. I mean, if they drop the points today, it's going to be impossible for them to catch up. I mean, they could win Everton. They could defeat Everton the last game of the season, but I think Spurs have an easier game against Norwich that almost guaranteed the win there anyway for them. So again, it's an important result on so many levels, as far as Burnley for the relegation zone negatively, and for Tottenham positively for the top four battle, which they still are pretty much into, of course. As I mentioned, Wolverhampton against Norwich 1-1, and then we move on to different things. Aston Villa, of course, drawn 1-1 against Crystal Palace, and then we move on to the title race and the title fight. City against West Ham. It was a game that, most people, including myself really, I predicted that City are going to go to West Ham, win the game quite easily, and, get closer to the title. But this result genuinely threw a spanner in the works, and it could have been even worse for City, because City were 2-0 down in the first half, and, not exactly because they were bad, but because the moments that West Ham were good, City were absolutely awful. They opened up spaces. Guardiola came at this game with a changed sort of side, of course. Fernandinho starting at the centre half, Alexander Zinchenko, Aymeric Laporte. Obviously, some were forced by the slew of injuries that he has, with Stones out, Walker out, Ruben Dias out. Genuinely looked like not exactly the best side that he could have. Even on the bench, didn't have the greatest of substitutions, and a big indication of that is that he didn't make any. Like, despite the fact that he had Phil Foden on the bench, Raheem Sterling on the bench, he didn't put any of them on the field, and Ilkay Gundogan didn't put any of them on the field. He chose to continue with the same 11 for the 90 minutes, and that was almost costly, really, because at certain points of the second half, it felt like City were exhausted. West Ham could have, with some substitutions, gotten the better of them. The second goal for City was an unfortunate own goal by Vladimir Koufal. The second half was better from City. The first half was not exactly that great, but the second half was better. But still, the result in general, the performance in general, it puts a real doubt in the City's mind. Maybe, West Ham's attack is good, but in my opinion, I don't know why I'm trying to say this, but it genuinely looks to me like, as a technical attack, I generally feel that Aston Villa's attack, was going to face them in the last round, is much better, much technically gifted, with the likes of Coutinho, Ramsey, Emiliano Buendia, Ollie Watkins. Those players are much technical. Antonio, as good as he can be for West Ham, He missed a couple of chances today. He had a glorious opportunity from a back pass from João Cancelo that went wrong, and he was head-to-head with Edison and didn't know how to deal with it. So the result overall is pretty disappointing for Guardiola. It will definitely make him worry about the last game. Liverpool, if they beat Southampton away, coming from the FA Cup momentum, they go 1 point behind, and then you don't know what's going to happen in the final day, because the goal difference is going to be the deciding factor if both teams end up with the same amount of point. At the moment, of course, City have this advantage of the goal difference because they have 72 plus going for them. Liverpool have only 65 plus going for them, so they need to make up the deficit with a big win over Southampton, at least to even take care of the goal difference factor anyway. That game is going to be really, really big for Liverpool against Southampton on Tuesday. As I mentioned, City's performance was disappointing in certain ways, particularly at the moments where West Ham found spaces behind their back. Like literally in the first half, there was like 2 big attacks for West Ham, and both ended up in the net from Jared Bowen, one of the best players in West Ham. And I really am waiting for the transfer window to see whose team is going to splash the cash for him and is going to try to convince him and lure him out of going from West Ham. There's a number of players actually in West Ham that are in this situation. There's Declan Rice, of course, the biggest target of them all, and certainly Jared Bowen. Other players maybe less so, the likes of Lanzini, maybe Said Benrahma. Who knows what's going to happen. Cresswell is a decent left back. It could be a really good option as well for any team that wants to buy him. So it will be interesting to see how West Ham will deal with him. I mean, also, we talk about disappointing for City. It's also disappointing for West Ham because the win could have gotten them over Man United in terms of the table and get the Europa League spots, of course, because of the advantage that they have over them in the goal difference. So it would definitely be a really interesting end of the season for West Ham. Of course, they play against Brighton Hove Albion away from home. Brighton, you think that they don't need anything from the season anymore, and probably a game where West Ham need the points more. Of course, Man United play against Crystal Palace away. This is going to be a tricky game for United. We know how they are, so Crystal Palace have a chance to beat them. West Ham win against Brighton Hove Albion, and they will snatch that Europa League spot from them in the last day of the season, which is going to be quite a disaster for Manchester United to cap off the season in a pretty embarrassing way, I suppose. So, as you mentioned, the round finishes off with Newcastle United playing Arsenal on Monday and Southampton hosting Liverpool. That is going to be on Tuesday. We move on to Italy and Serie A now, and it seems to be like the biggest takeaway from the round 37 is that AC Milan are going to be one step closer towards the Scudetto for the first time since 2010-2011 after defeating Atalanta 2-0. Let's go through the results first. On Saturday, Empoli drawn against Salernitana 1-0. Torino defeated Verona away 1-0. Spezia managed to keep themselves in Serie A with the win against Udinese 3-2 away from home. Venezia got a draw against Roma 1-1 with 10 man. Sassuolo defeated Bologna away 3-1. 3-0 for Napoli against Genoa, 2-0 for Milan against Atalanta. Cagliari lost against Inter Milan 3-1, and we start from there. Of course, the 2 games for the Milan sides, certainly the most important for the title race. AC Milan entered the game against Atalanta, of course, the necessity to win, despite the record against Atalanta not being great as of late. I mean, the last 5 games between the 2 sides, Atalanta, in the last 5 games between the 2 sides, Atalanta came to San Siro and embarrassed Milan, 3-0 the last time these 2 met in the San Siro, and it definitely was, one of those seasons, in my opinion, for Milan, this one, where they needed the victory the most. They needed the victory. They got it against Atalanta. 2-0 it was. Rafael Leao in the 56th minute. 2-0 for Theo Hernandez in the 75th. A great solo goal from Theo Hernandez. Unbelievable run from his own box to the Atalanta box and scoring over 75 yards. It's a physical feat. The goal may not be special in terms of technique, but as a physical feat, running that space and running that distance from back to front, from your box to their box. It's absolutely impressive. From definitely the best left back in the Serie A at the moment, one of the best in the world, certainly quite underrated as well. People do not give him as much credit as some people, tend to give other left backs in the world, like Robertson or whatever. So definitely a big win for Milan, 1 point away from the Serie A title, of course, because if they draw in the last game against Sassuolo away, even with Inter winning, with the head-to-head advantage for AC Milan in the terms of the league derbies, with the goal difference as well. The goal difference, although not working for them, but definitely the head-to-head advantage, which is a deciding factor for Serie A, will definitely go for AC Milan's way because of their win. Because of their win, the head-to-head record against Inter Milan. 2-0 against Atalanta, big win for them. Atalanta firmly now in out of European positions at the moment until something happens. If Fiorentina, of course, defeats Sampdoria, it will be Atalanta out of European places, completely away from them if they beat them on Monday. Inter Milan defeated Cagliari 3-1 to keep their hopes for the Serie A, of course, are up and running. 3-1, a routine victory, I suppose, although Cagliari gave them much more resistance in the second half, but eventually that resistance was broken. Lautaro Martinez gotten 2 goals for him, in the second and the third, after Matteo Darmian's opening in the 25th minute. Perisic continues to be really great, doing really well for Inter Milan, and genuinely, this was one of the most exciting title races that I saw in Serie A in a while. Yes, it wasn't a 3-horse race as I really liked it to be. Napoli were out of the race, but I think Inter Milan and AC Milan gave us a really good fight till the end, and they showed why they are two of the most historic sides in Italian football anyway. So big victories for both of them. Definitely the last round for both is a little bit tough. Inter Milan, although much easier for Inter Milan, I suppose. They play Sampdoria, who they still they're still within the not away from the relegation zone, obviously safe. They're not going to be relegated, but definitely it was the kind of season for Sampdoria where you expect Inter to just bash them in the head 4-0 or 5-0 anyway. It will be a bit tough, of course, for Inter Milan, but definitely Milan's game against Sassuolo away from home at Reggio del Mare is going to be much tougher for the Rossoneri, where they need at least 1 point, of course, but a victory, of course, would be the all sweeter. It was a celebratory sort of atmosphere at San Siro against Atalanta, and hopefully for them it will be a celebratory atmosphere away from home at the Reggio Emilia in the Mappe Stadium when they face Sassuolo, because that's going to be an unbelievable end to the season. It's going to be a dream season for them, a dream season for a lot of players like Zlatan Ibrahimovic, Olivier Giroud, who never got to win a Premier League with either Chelsea or Arsenal. So definitely he will be very content of winning Serie A with AC Milan in Italy. So elsewhere in Serie A, as we mentioned, the results: Napoli defeated Genoa 3-0. I think my biggest takeaway from this game is only the fact that Lorenzo Insigne was honoured, but they gave him a trophy that is literally taller than him, so that's probably the most notable thing about the whole game, aside from the 3-0 victory. Pretty pedestrian win for Napoli against Genoa, a side that is, basically two steps from being relegated alongside Cagliari and Venezia. And these two sides, like Genoa and Cagliari, are pretty big sides in Italy, like pretty stalwarts from the Serie A, and that is going to be a really sad feeling to see them going down, because for a lot of people, they're part of the culture of the Serie A football, Cagliari and Genoa, so it's going to be sad to see them go, because at the moment it seems like those two are going to be joining Venezia in going down to the Serie B. Sassuolo, as you mentioned, defeated Bologna 3-1, a game that didn't mean anything for both. It just, games of improving the finish on the table. Venezia relegated already, sure of relegation. They don't really need to think about it any longer. They faced Roma. They played nothing to lose, really. They almost took the win against Roma, but they only took the draw. It could have been a crazy scenario if Venezia won, because that would give them actually a chance to survive in Serie A, but certainly Roma's equaliser in that game, coming on from Eldos Moradov, a substitute in the second half, gave them the big win. Of course, they play the Conference League final next week. on 25th of May they play the Conference League final, Roma against Feyenoord Rotterdam in Tirana. That's a title for them that they will take. It will qualify them to the Europa League. I mean, they qualified to the Europa League anyway from the league or from winning the Conference League. Of course, I mean, they still didn't officially qualify from the league because they could end up losing both the final and their place in the Europa League anyway. But at the moment, they seem pretty destined to play in that competition next season. As you mentioned, Udinese, Spezia saved themselves and they're going to be staying in Serie A with a 3-2 victory over Udinese, and Torino defeating Hellas Verona 1-1. Two sides that are neck to neck on the table. Torino with victory didn't do them any favour. They didn't go over them, they didn't overleap them on the table. And then, of course, as you mentioned, Empoli against Salernitana 1-1. Salernitana were leading, in fact, in this game, or they actually equalised after Empoli opened the scoring thanks to Patrick Cofroni. Salernitana, who at the moment they seem to be they're really 1 point away, or 3 points away from relegation, from saving themselves in Serie A. Actually, the game against Udinese at home, they're going to be trying to win it to do whatever they can to survive in Serie A. Their opponents, Cagliari, play away to Venezia, a side that is already relegated, so they're not going to lose any sleep if they lose that game. And then you have Genoa, of course, playing against Bologna. Also, Genoa need the points, but Bologna do not need them, so it's a very, very complicated situation as far as Salernitana is concerned. But certainly the title race is the most important and the most exciting of the bunch at the moment. Who's going to be winning it? Is Milan going to slip against Sassuolo and allow Inter Milan, as you mentioned, who play at home to Sampdoria, to steal it in the last second? And that would be quite disappointing and disastrous as far as AC Milan is concerned. Anyway, the last round, of course, is going to be played on next Sunday. Atalanta play Empoli, Fiorentina, Juve, Genoa, Bologna, Inter, Sampdoria, Lazio, Hellas Verona, Salernitana, Udinese, Sassuolo, Milan, Spezia, Napoli, Torino, Roma, and Venezia, Cagliari. For this round 37, it finishes off on Monday with Sampdoria playing Fiorentina and Juventus playing Lazio. That's it for this episode. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I was your boy, the HOD of the PSP. Like, share, comment on the YouTube version, subscribe to the channel, enable notifications to receive all the updates, and of course, follow us on social media and listen on any platform available. That's it. Take care and goodbye.